You know, our whole modern world is built on this invisible foundation, the electrical grid. It powers literally everything: our homes, hospitals, our phones, the entire economy. But what if that foundation is way more fragile than we think? What if a storm, one born not here on Earth, but 93 million miles away on the sun, could bring it all crashing down? This brings me to a really strange message from the past. It's 1859. Two telegraph operators are chatting. But here's the wild part. Their batteries are completely disconnected. They're literally communicating using raw, untamed electricity that a massive solar storm was inducing in the wires, a true ghost in the machine. And no, this wasn't science fiction. This was the real deal. It was called the Carrington Event, and it was the largest geomagnetic storm ever recorded. It was a pretty stark reminder of the sun's raw power, long before we built the sprawling and, well, vulnerable electrical world we all live in today. So here's how it all went down. In late August of that year, an astronomer named Richard Carrington noticed the sun was acting weird. Lots of sunspots. Then, on September 1st, he saw it, a colossal solar flare. Just 17.6 hours later, which is an incredibly fast trip from the sun, a wave of magnetized particles slammed into Earth. And for the tech of the day, it was chaos. Telegraph systems just went haywire, shocking operators, even setting the paper on fire. And yet, somehow, some of them could still send messages using the storm's own eerie energy. Okay, but that was a world of simple wires and batteries. So what would an event like that do to our world today? To even begin to answer that, we need to look at the threat itself, the immense and kind of unpredictable power of our own sun. The simplest way to think about what's called a coronal mass ejection, or CME, is like this. Just imagine the sun having a massive sneeze. It's this violent eruption that blasts billions of tons of charged particles and magnetic fields out into space at incredible speeds. And, well, sometimes Earth is directly in the path of that sneeze. And this is where it all started. This is actually Richard Carrington's own drawing of the sunspots he saw. Just a quiet scientific observation that turned out to be the prelude to a planet-wide electrical event. A simple sketch of a storm gathering 93 million miles away. It's kind of humbling, isn't it? So how does a space event actually cause problems down here on the ground? Well, when a CME's magnetic field tangles with our planet's magnetic field, it creates these powerful currents in the Earth's crust. They're called geomagnetically induced currents, or GICs. And these currents, they're looking for the path of least resistance. And what makes a better path than thousands of miles of highly conductive metal power lines? And believe me, this isn't just a theory. Look at this. This giant transformer at a New Jersey power plant was crippled by a geomagnetic storm back in March of 1989. And get this, that storm was way, way weaker than the Carrington event. The GICs flowing in from the grid literally fried its insides. Now, if you zoom out, you can start to see how this vulnerability just scales up across an entire nation. This map shows the potential scope of the problem in the US. All those red dots are huge, vulnerable transformers. The shaded areas are where the whole power system would likely collapse in a really bad storm. So yeah, it's not a local problem, it's a systemic one. But you know, the sun isn't the only threat that can cause this kind of chaos. We ourselves have actually engineered a weapon that can mimic the sun's most dangerous effects, but it does it in a concentrated, instantaneous burst. I'm talking about the electromagnetic pulse. To really get your head around a high-altitude EMP, or HEMP, picture a bolt of lightning. Now imagine that bolt doesn't strike one spot. Imagine it strikes an entire continent, all at the exact same millisecond. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. So what is it exactly? Well, a HEMP is created by detonating a nuclear weapon way up in the atmosphere, anywhere from about 30 to 400 kilometers high. The gamma rays from that explosion hit the atmosphere and generate this intense, sweeping pulse of electromagnetic energy that just radiates down to the surface. And this pulse isn't just one single event. As you can see from this graph, it's more like a devastating 1, 2, 3 punch. First, you get the E1 pulse. It's an incredibly fast spike that fries delicate microelectronics. Then comes the E2 pulse, which is a lot like a lightning strike. And finally, the slow E3 pulse arrives, which acts a lot like a solar storm, creating those destructive currents in long power lines and transformers. Okay, now before we get too alarmed, it is absolutely crucial to understand that the bar for this kind of attack is very, very high. You need a nuclear weapon, obviously. But not just that, you need a ballistic missile that can detonate it at just the right, very high altitude. And according to UK Defense Intelligence, the ability to launch an attack like that over, say, Europe or the United States, well, it's not something that's currently believed to be in the hands of nations like Iran or North Korea.
But look, whether the cause is natural or man-made, the result is the same, the potential for a widespread long-term blackout. So what would that actually look like? Well, the direct effect, no electricity, is really just the beginning of a cascading failure across society. This testimony from Avi Schnur of the Electric Infrastructure Security Council lays it out pretty starkly. The power grid going down isn't the end of the story. It's just the first domino to fall. Without electricity, the systems for pumping clean water, for refining fuel, for coordinating transport, for communications, for financial markets, they would all start to fail, one after another. So would society just immediately fall apart? Well, history gives us a complicated answer. Just look at these two blackouts in New York City. In 1977, the city was in a tough spot economically. The lights went out, and the result was chaos, widespread looting. But fast forward to 2003, and that blackout revealed a totally different city, one of community spirit, people helping each other, real resilience. It just goes to show you that the outcome isn't predetermined. It depends a lot on the social fabric that's already there. So, let's just imagine the worst happens. The grid is down. The truly monumental task isn't just about fixing what's broken, it's about rebooting our entire electrical civilization from a dead stop, a process that engineers call a black start.
A helpful way to visualize the grid is to think of it like the body's circulatory system. The transmission lines are the arteries and veins, and the substations and transformers, those are the vital organs. Experts actually use this kind of network theory to model the whole system, which lets them understand not just how it works, but more importantly, how it breaks.
This diagram kind of shows the different states of the grid. It can go from normal to alert, then to emergency, and in a total collapse to a state they call in extremis. The path back, through that restorative phase, that is a long and incredibly complex journey. You really can't just flip a switch and turn it all back on. And here's that journey simplified. First, you have to isolate sections of the dead grid. Then, special power plants, usually hydropower dams that don't need outside electricity to start up, are energized. They create these stable cranking paths to wake up the bigger power plants. Only then can you start to slowly, so carefully, reconnect the grid and finally bring cities and homes back online, piece by painful piece. The sheer difficulty of a black start makes one thing crystal clear. The best solution is to avoid the collapse in the first place. And that means engineering a smarter, tougher, and more resilient grid for the future. Building that resilience is a huge effort on many fronts. It starts with using advanced modeling to find and protect the most critical parts of the network. It means hardening our infrastructure so it can withstand both solar storms and EMPs. And it requires a ton of coordination between scientists, industry, and government, all to create national strategies for these high-impact, though hopefully very rare, events. So, we've explored the threat from 93 million miles away and the threat we created right here at home. We've seen just how vulnerable we are and the immense challenge of recovery. It really all leads to one fundamental question we have to keep asking ourselves. In a civilization so completely built on a constant flow of electrons, what is our actual plan for the day the lights go out and stay out?